on a lot of, as you heard, cruises. And so I'd been around the perimeter of Spain quite a bit. But I had not been to Madrid and Toledo, which I felt bad about it since it's our sister city and supposed to be a wonderful place. So this particular cruise that's part of this didn't really interest me because the only places it stopped were in the Canary Islands, and I had been there twice before. But then I got an email, I get all these travel emails all the time, from an outfit that we had gone to Cuba with, Legendary Journeys. And it had such a fantastic price that it caught my attention. It was $1,900 for 24 days, wow, including air to Spain from Florida, but they would, for a price, they would do it from Detroit. 3 days in Madrid, hotel, breakfast, some sightseeing, then the bus to Malaga, 7 days in Malaga with 2 meals a day and some sightseeing, and then the 13 or 14-day cruise, stopping at the Canary Islands and ending up in Florida. That just looked 24 days for $1,900. That looked really good. Well, in the meantime, I was on another Royal Caribbean cruise, and you know, if you've been on cruises, they try to get you to sign up for another one. And they offered a pretty good deal on this other one. I had talked to them at Legendary Journeys, and they insisted that if I booked the cruise on the cruise, that I could transfer it to whatever travel agency or whatever. So that's what I did. The cruise itself was $715, including tax, per person for the 14-day cruise. And I thought that was a pretty good bargain, except I found out later that some people had bought it on a one-day sale, like on December 31st, through a cruise company, and they had gotten it for $3.99. That's always wonderful to find out somebody got something cheaper than you did. But I still thought it was a pretty good deal. So when I got back, I tried to get Legendary Journeys to adjust and whatever, and they couldn't handle this at all. And my husband wasn't crazy about the idea of 24 days, and really I wasn't either. So I said, okay, I'll just plan everything else myself. And so luckily, when you go on Royal Caribbean or their sister Celebrity, they have an air website called Air to Sea. And they can get you some good prices on basically one-way air. Because sometimes if you try to do one of these transatlantics or whatever, you can pay big bucks for the air. And so I kept watching it. And finally, one day, it had been running about $500 for the one way from Detroit to Madrid. One day it was $322. So I grabbed it. And so we were on our way. And then I just made the rest of the arrangements. I booked some tours and through cruisecritic.com. This is, if you're going on some cruises, check out cruisecritic.com. You meet other people that are on your same cruise, and a lot of times they will organize private tours or give you advice on things. Sometimes it doesn't work. I'm signed up for a cruise in April, and right now there are 2 of us signed up through Cruise Critic, and not much is happening. But there were a lot, and you'll see some of the evidence of this as we go along. So anyway, this picture is from, that's El Greco's view of Toledo, which is, I used to think we had it in our museum. It's in New York. It's in New York. I got it off the internet, so it's not the greatest picture. But that was, I always liked El Greco, and so that's one of the reasons that we're doing this. Okay. There's a sunrise. I like to end with sunsets, but we'll start with the sunrise as we're going into Madrid. Now we're on the train from the airport into the city, the train station in Madrid. And actually, I wasn't that interested in Madrid. We're on the train, going across the plain, not in the rain, in Spain, to the city of Cuenca, C-U-E-N-C-A. It's near Valencia. And I had seen this in a guidebook somewhere, and it just looked kind of interesting. There's a gargoyle. And get used to that blue sky. You'll see a lot of that blue sky. This is on the cathedral. But we decided to spend an overnight in Cuenca. We took the train from Madrid. It was about an hour. And it's on a gorge. I have this thing about gorges. I like gorges. Yeah. And there's a pedestrian bridge across the gorge. And that used to be a monastery. And I think it's a posada now, where you can, one of the higher priced places to stay overnight. And that's looking back across the gorge. And what they have here are the hanging houses, the Casa Colgadas. And that's across the bridge. There's my husband at the other end of the bridge. That's looking from the new town. Some friends of mine, parents, had been in the new town. They said, oh, that's a waste, don't go there. Well, you had to go to the old town. The new town was kind of nothing. There are the Casa Colgadas. These are the hanging houses. They hang right there over the gorge. Yep, it says it right there. There's the cathedral, no steeple. You were there?
The fall of 2017.
Oh, wow, you've been there since I was. There's our first lunch. There's the white asparagus with some sauce. And my husband's appetizer has eggs, rice, and tomato sauce. Yeah, appetizer. This was very reasonable. I think we both ate here for about $20, including the wine. And I have albondigas, meatballs, and French fries. Those are the wimpiest looking French fries. And he has some kind of pork thing. There's the outside of the restaurant. It was very pretty. And there are actually two gorges there, one on each side, and that's looking down the other gorge. You can see there's like a trail. If we had more time, and we had a little bit of fall color. This was probably around the end of November. Yep, end of November. And that's looking back toward Newtown. And out there was the railroad station. When we arrived there, we didn't know where the hotel was. We just hired a cab to go there. But then that's their new theater complex. When we found out, we could get the bus back to the train station for something like €1. So when we went back, we just did that instead of the $10 cab ride. And that's our Spanish lasagna that night for supper. And they give you like little tapas for appetizers. We didn't order those, they just brought them. What's left of them, we ate them. And that's my special of Cuenca. It's ham and eggs. It was a very pretty place, also on the main square. And you can see when we went in there like 7 o'clock to eat, we were early. They don't eat till later. This was our place, our posada at night. And it used to be a convent. This is the TV room. Because we didn't have a television in our room. But actually, there's our room. I thought we should call it our cell. Since it was a convent. And we had a wash bowl in our room. I made a mistake and didn't order a private bath. Usually I do when my husband goes. And those are the headboards. And so when we got there and I found out we didn't have a private bath, I said, well, how much is it to have a private bath? He said, $30 more. And my husband said, no, we'll skip that. I think we were the only people there. So the bathroom was right across the hall, as close as it is at home. So we did fine. Now that was the train station in Toledo. We took the train back to Toledo, and we got on back to Madrid, and got on another train to Toledo. This hotel was $50. The other one was $43 with no breakfast. This one was $50, and we had a television and a breakfast. And we took the ho-ho bus. There's our hotel, right across from the train station. We took the ho-ho bus. It was around $10. And it doesn't go really into Toledo because it's a pedestrian city. Streets are very narrow. So we're going around Toledo. And we stopped at this view, and there's a bride and groom getting their picture taken. There's El Greco's view. The bus always stops here so that, of course, there's a lot more buildings in the picture than when El Greco painted it. But there's the cathedral. That's the Tagus River. That's the longest river in Spain. And there's a whole new part of Toledo outside of the wall, but inside of the wall is very well preserved. And there's part of the wall and the gate. So then we got off and headed on foot. There is a little tourist tram that does go around inside the old part of the city. They were passing out flyers for this restaurant, and we were hungry. So we went right there. And those are our little appetizers again. Whatever they are. And there he's got that white asparagus and a tuna salad. That was very good. But he had some kind of beef tenderloin that was awful. I was supposed to get gazpacho, but it turned out to be like a cream of chicken soup. And that's my specialty. It's a Toledo specialty. Pork. Usually it's pork. And that was our surroundings in the restaurant. It was wonderful. And then there's that blue sky again. Then we started out on foot. Now there are Toledo blades. Lots of Toledo blades. Toledo blades. Yes. And Oro de Toledo is another sign you see a lot. Gold of Toledo. This was just a neat window that had all these pretty lamps. And there's Don Quixote. Welcoming us. We're in the cathedral. I've been in so many cathedrals, I don't always shell out the bucks to go in cathedrals anymore, but I had read where this altarpiece is just absolutely spectacular. And in the choir section, all of those sections at the top there are carved, and each one represents a city in Spain, and they go in order that they were recaptured from during the Reconquest, when they got them back from the North African Moors. And that's probably some of the organ. I'm an organist, so I always have to take a picture of the organ. I didn't get to play that one. They're very protective. And a little more up there, Mary and Joseph. But the gold is just amazing. Now this is in the sacristy. There is St. Peter being crucified upside down, which is what he wanted. And here's an El Greco of Christ before the crucifixion. And the ladies down at the corner are averting their eyes. And there is a carpenter working on the cross. But Christ looks just very sort of tranquil. And this is very hard to see. But it's a picture of, it's supposed to be Joseph with the young Jesus walking. And El Greco used to walk with his young son a lot like this. So it's sort of a self-portrait. But there's the skyline of Toledo was in the bottom corner of the picture. Some of the stained glass windows. And I thought that was an unusual picture of a guy with his little boy on his shoulder and a bird. And we're back outside with some more blue sky. We had a lot of blue sky, especially that first week in Spain. We hardly saw a cloud the whole time. The weather was perfect, actually on the whole trip. But once you got away from that first square with the gate where, oh, there's Toledo Police. Once you got away from the main square, it was fairly empty, but that main square was just packed with people. And I like side streets. And it's sloped so that the water runs down the middle. And this is one of my favorite pictures. This was a bakery run by nuns. And I'll bet they sell a lot of these coming up here. There they are. church nearby, the St. Thomas Church, and it was supposed to have an El Greco in the narthex, which they didn't want anybody taking pictures of. That's the pulpit. It's like a wrought iron pulpit, which is unusual. Usually the pulpits in these churches are just very, very elaborate. That one was fairly simple. And now we're in the breakfast room back at our hotel the next morning. And we had a wonderful breakfast included, like I said, for the $50. I think I did that one on booking.com. That is, you can hardly see it here, but that's a model. It's all in black stone of Toledo. I wore my Holy Toledo shirt, and nobody said anything about it. And there's some of the meat and the cheeses and more meat and yogurt and cereal and all kinds of jellies and all kinds of pâtés and cheeses. And you'd think you're in another church here, but you're not. You're back at the train station. This was a really beautiful train station. It was from about 1910. And that was the area where you used to buy your tickets. Now there's a machine and you stick your credit card in. But we had bought our tickets, not for the big train trip, which is coming up, but for the one to Cuenca and the one in Toledo in the train station in Madrid. And it was kind of a good thing that we did because my husband saw a sign that said senior citizen discount. So for like $6, we got a card and we got 40% off on the 2 train tickets. We're back in Madrid, and this is the museum that has Picasso's Guernica. And you can't take pictures of it in the museum, but that's the picture that really established El Greco on the world stage. Everywhere we went, there were gobs of school kids. Going somewhere, my husband says, "Don't they ever go to school?" And that's the train station. It was right across the street. We had parked our big suitcases. We checked them at the train station. And you could check them for 24 hours. So in between, when we came back to Madrid, we had to redo them for another day. There is Guernica. And this commemorates the saturation bombing of that particular northern Spain city by Hitler during the 1930s in the Spanish Civil War. He was giving his Luftwaffe some practice in doing this kind of thing leading up to World War II. And now we're back on the train, going across the plain in Spain. And I had looked ahead of time online, and the economy ticket was about $70, but I didn't buy it right then. And when I went back to buy it, it was 90-something. But first class was only 80. So I bought a first class ticket, and we got a wonderful salmon dinner and a bottle of wine. And we're going 180 miles an hour. That's why I took the picture out the window like that, so you can see what it's like to go 180 miles an hour. And I think we saw about 1 million olive trees. And so we went out. This was a 2.5-hour train ride. If we had taken the bus like the original tour was, that was like 7 hours by bus. So now, it's the next day. And I booked a trip to Morocco, a day trip. And we had to be at the square in Malaga at 6 o'clock in the morning. And we got on the bus, and now we're spending 3 hours going around picking up everybody else for the tour. We had to go to the main square. These other people all got picked up right at their hotel. We weren't happy about that. But we're heading down. We're actually going behind the Rock of Gibraltar. We never once saw the Rock of Gibraltar on this little day trip. We're at Tarifa, and we're on the Atlantic side of the Rock of Gibraltar. And we're going in a boat, somewhat like that, over to Morocco. And here we are leaving Tangiers. I booked this online through Viator, Viator. They do tours all around the world. And I happened to catch it on a day when they were having a 10% off sale. So I think we got this for about $90. And it was the bus ride and the ferry ride and the tour of Tangiers. And we're coming upon Tangiers. There it is. We're going to be tangerines for a day. That's what people from Tangiers are. They are tangerines. So that was fun, being a tangerine for a while. We liked the first part. And the name of our boat was the Detroit Jet. We thought that was kind of interesting. There are all the people. We had a bus tour around modern Tangiers. There are lots of docks out there for boats.